Hi students, we'll just start the workshop at 11:05. We'll wait for 2 minutes for more students to join. Okay. All right then. I think we can begin. So we have a workshop today with Mr. Hitansu. He's going to run us through the routing principles on Ableton Live. We have a lot of first-year students as well with us, so I'm sure this topic will be really helpful to find how they're going to go about it. Yeah. So let me welcome Hitansu without further ado. So hi Hitansu.
Hi, Roger. Very good
So,
morning to everyone.
alrighty. So thanks for joining us, Hitansu.
Yeah,
So today the workshop's going to be on routing principles using Live, right?
yeah,
And you're going to show us how it works on Live 11.
yeah,
So
exactly.
we know that there are a lot of new features that are included in Live 11. So which one is your favorite, Hitanshu?
So, first of all, first and foremost, which I would like to say that it's a great, you know, I would say the efforts by Ableton Live have given to to the Live 10, which has been upgraded right now as 11. And being a user and being producers, and I'm sure that out there are many producers those who are using Ableton Live. Uh, so the features become very optimized, and again, I would say the recording features like stack tracking and comping. Along with that, it is compatible with the MP, that is the MIDI polyphonic expressions, mostly are morphing instruments like Rolly or many more other stuff that
Mhm.
are completely compatible. Before it wasn't like
Right.
that, and so on. They have given many features in it in terms of recording, which is comping is one of the most important features was needed before. So that was the thing, and I have the Ableton Live 11
All right.
for our all
So this is how it
students.
looks.
Yeah, it's little changed the UI, the color they have changed little more, little darker and finishing.
Mm-hmm.
Wise it is looking more good.
Mm-hmm.
Buttons are more looking precious and looking so rich. That's how they have been designed it.
Right.
Yeah, but the most important things, more than anybody who uses the DAW, is how usefully and tech, tactfully you can handle the situation by having the ergonomical design of the UI design, mostly in DAWs, no matter whatever the DAW does.
So they've
So
definitely upgraded the UI
yes,
with
yes.
maybe better categorizing stuff and
Yeah,
stuff, right?
correct. So we can see that most before it was in the 10, it was uncategorized. It was so random. Now you can see that it is all categorized in terms of categories of audio processors like dynamics, then drive and colors and EQs and filters is one categories, modulations is one categories, pitch and modulations, reverbs, resonance. All these things you get the switcher as a expander and collapse, and you choose. It's very easy for right now to see the things. It was so random that back in those days, and whenever you're using 10, you used to seriously just type compressor and you used to get the compressor because it's very hard to
Right.
get it. That's how it is.
So, Hitachi, thanks for explaining it to us. And students are going to be really excited to get their hands on Live 11. So today's topic is going to be live routing, Hitanshu. So how important do you think routing and how easy is it in live compared to other, like I'm not comparing it with other DAWs, but how straightforward it is, do you think, on Ableton Live?
Very good question, Roger. So, uh, most important thing is for either even it is a musician or whether he is a sound engineer, whoever it is using for us, the most important thing is how well designed the DW and how easily accessed. That way, I definitely cannot compare because every DW has his own way to go. Ableton has his own way to go. So, I would say one thing in terms of routing principles to understand for even whoever doing music or whoever doing mixing, whoever into any kind of streamline, and how they have to understand the routing principles, number one, and why it is important, as we know that mostly for processing, mostly for many other layering or layering instruments or submixing, and many more other also things which we do it in terms of MIDI routing principles.
Right.
uh, Early days, before 90s, or I would say, when the inception of MIDI protocol started with, I would categorize into two parts. One is the MIDI, another one is understanding the sound in terms of mixing. So I would definitely pull in console, and I will definitely pull in MIDI routing devices using MIDI host, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when the things were introduced, it was always when hardware connected. When we are in the page, like a software, we are understanding the software instruments, it's replicated completely. So then every DAW has its own features, where Ableton, features in terms of MIDI routing and audio routing, and the submerging of both the things together was one of the very pretty straightforward point, as you asked.
Right.
And that is the most important features. Generally we use it in other DAWs. Definitely I would not be taking the name, but yes, they have a different environment, creating the monitor devices and
Mm-hmm.
transformers and sending the routing, or creating your own kind of environment of daisy chain process or daisy chain process, what you call.
Mm-hmm.
But here in this tool, it is really straightforward.
Right. And so when you're talking about this, right, Hitanshu, there's two different kind of routings in my head. Okay.
Yeah.
So when someone's gonna produce music,
Hmm.
there's one kind of approach that they have,
Yeah.
and when someone's just gonna mix something, right,
Hmm.
there's definitely another kind of approach that they're gonna have on routing.
Definitely.
Especially when you spoke about they create their own environment, right? So there's a
Exactly.
routing way that they get used to it and get doing it. So would you be touching those concepts, like if it's going to be a music producer, what approach
Yes.
he should have, and for mixing, what kind of approach they should have? Would you be covering such topics today?
Yes, Roger. So that is what the topic is all about.
Okay.
What I'll be doing is I'll try to make some kind of minimum, or probably like very minimal groove, to
Mm-hmm.
showcasing these demonstrations of understanding the routing principles. Number one,
Right.
and probably through that session only, I'll be showing them that how they can understand the routing principles in Ableton, but more than that, artistic approach. See,
Mm.
here in this. I always emphasize this word artistic approach, because end of the day, whether you are a sound engineer or music producers, there is always been an artist within us. We
Right.
understand music and we listen to different genres and styles of music. We understand them,
Mm-hmm.
and as an engineer, we generally put ourselves into another shoe, and we just walk in away and trying to understand other genre, even though that's not your favorite. This is practical thing. This is generally happens with
Right.
everybody.
Right.
Nobody can like all the genres. That is
True.
the eternal truth. So, but when it comes to us, we cannot be everywhere. We cannot be into all the genres. That is why there are different engineers for different artists and different kind of style of music,
Mm-hmm.
or probably music production wise. Also, it is the same thing that everybody cannot be, until unless you are a person who is born in a golden plate and you've been doing everything as in everything. It's like jack of all trades and master of none. I would
True.
say all generally call it as. But that, whatever it is, but yes, that artistic approach is very important, and that way this technology is submerging and giving the ideas of what endless possibilities we could do it, or what complicated ideas generally coming into our mind, where DAWs is like a path,
Mm-hmm.
especially routing principle is the path to get us to that point, and to let us helping out in terms of making that kind of sound, making that kind of effects which
Mm-hmm.
generally in commercial music or underground music, which generally we listen to.
Mm.
So yeah, that is what the topic for today, and that's what it's all about.
So yeah, Hitanshu, I don't want to hold you back anymore. Let's get into today's workshop. Thanks a lot for doing this for us. And with the students, even I'm gonna like curiously look forward to the routing concept because you're an artist by yourself, right? You've been working a lot with productions, and
Yeah.
you have your way of working. And I'm really curious to know how the working is all about. So let's get into it, Hitanshu. Um,
Thank you, Roger.
it's
Well,
all
thank you so
yours.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So, in front of you, all of you, those who are here, and I would like to say hi to everyone. And I would say some of my students are here, some of them probably in the streaming. There must be some other people, I'll say. So, hi to everyone. I'm Hitansu. I'm a music producer, come a sound engineer, and I'm an educator in Seamedu School of Pro Expressionism. And yes, I've been working in industry more than 6 years and contributing myself as a producer as well. So today the topic is all about, as Roger mentioned, that how and why routing principle is so important. First and foremost, which we need to understand is why we do the routing principles. Consider a console, consider a physical devices. Why we generally have a different plate. It's like you are in need of a helping hand. We do not want to affect to that particular object, but you just wanted to process in a different way. That is number one. But number two, routing principles become more vast. Layering down instruments in terms of numbers of synthesizers together forming one instrument. It is like layering of instruments forming one kind of a timbre quality. Submixing, mostly when we do the mixing, we group the tracks. So these are the terminologies which I generally would be using, and those who are new to DAW definitely would not be understanding, or definitely new to the technologies. Those are watching apparently, but um, what exactly I want to convey here is, in a simple manner, is how do you make things completely easy and simplified. Number one. Number two, without taking your enough processing power from computer, because computer also having its own processing power. Depends on that what we generally use it, and that is also relate, because one computer cannot do. That is why most of the bigger studios or biggest studios, they have PCI cards expansions and card slots. Even it can be in a bedroom studio as well, but until unless you are doing those kind of projects and you kind of making your entire whole studios more powerful, or the most powerful studio for yourself. So there are many application in it. It is, if it is music production wise, if it is mixing wise, if it is post production wise, whether there is a film work, whether it is surround sound, routing principle is everywhere, guys. So that way, so then I would be definitely defining, and I will be explaining you today two categories of it. One is the music production category. So in front of you, this is Live 11, Ableton Live 11, and but the routing principle is the same, and they have given the same. And over here, those who've been using Ableton Live, or those who are new to it, and if you really want to understand क्या होता है routing principle, क्यों इतना मतलब ज़रूरी होता है, and why it is so important. I will be definitely using Hindi. Definitely people around, those who will be like watching apparently, though those who are not completely keen on the English. So that way I'm gonna be in a hybrid mode. So yeah. Um, so in front of me I have 3 MIDI devices, and as you can see, if I just check on my MIDI from MIDI 2, and over here you see that every DAW has MIDI tracks and audio tracks, right? So then in the Ableton over here, there are 2 audio tracks, there are 2 MIDI tracks, and as a hierarchy of a DAW's channel hierarchy, you generally see that in and out. All right, so IO assignments is one of the very important categories to see and looking over in any DAWs, and you generally set your input and outputs. So when it is about first software instrument track or MIDI track, you deals with in Ableton MIDI from, that is in, or MIDI or audio 2 over here apparently. But if I just create a simple MIDI track without any instrument in it, it shows MIDI from and MIDI 2. That is nothing but in and out. All right. And if I just choose the out, this chooser let me choose to the master track until unless I would have a devices. So that is when this is a MIDI instrument. There is a device, you can see there's a bell piano. It sounds like this. There's drums in it. All right. And my audio track over here, there are two audio tracks which I've created. And you can see same goes over here in the audio track, audio from audio to. So this is the in and out of the audio forms. So generally you see this in Ableton Live, that is ext.in in audio track. Use that doesn't mean it's something kind of external instrument. Mostly people they get confused with this. It's the external in. External in is all about shows you the numbers of channels here. You can see apparently I have a interface which has two in and out. And stereo I can either mention or one single channel I can assign it, one or two. Apparently connected to the one channel. So I'll definitely assign one. What more other things which you see in the MIDI? I have a push over here, Ableton push. Alright, so I can just allow my first track, bell piano, coming from the Ableton push too. That means I have something else here also. I'm trying to trigger, you can see that I'm trying to trigger. Nothing is happening. But the moment when I start playing something on my push, it's playing. But when I'm just trying to play on my Arturia, my left side MIDI keyboard, it's not at all accepting. This is the same thing which we generally used to do with allocating different MIDI controllers with the specific MIDI channels. And what do you mean by MIDI channels? Which has the capabilities of carrying different instrument into different channel in it. It is just like audio channel, but the protocol completely different. So MIDI channel lets you categorize numbers of MIDI devices, and mostly MIDI devices are nothing but synthesizers, samplers, sequencers, and so on and so forth. And over there, let's say I have A and B and C three synthesizers. A is channel 1. I can assign channel 1. This is generally I've been teaching it whenever I take classes in my Ableton classes. But yeah, this needs the sources for you to understand it. So all channel means all my MIDI devices, all my ABC synthesizers, all my three synthesizers will be acting, and it will be common output as 1. So that is how it is all about. Okay, and yeah. So I could see that some of them they are saying it is audible or not audible. If you just can't. Hi Roger, so if you are there, is it audible? My output?
Yes, Hitansu, it's audible. So I advise them to turn on original sound, and now it's audible for everybody. Yes, it is audible.
Cool, because all of a sudden the message popped in, so I just
right.
On it. Anyways, cool. So now, first thing, to make it things completely simplified, today I am not here to entertain you in terms of music. Today here I'm to entertain you to more of understanding those who are trying to understand Ableton Live. And second thing is routing principles. Things are very pretty straightforward, guys, and it's very like ergonomic, and it's too much of complexity you can create it just to create that creativity whatever creates in your mind. That's how I can call it as. So there are many approaches, and generally when we make the music there are different approaches comes in. So the first thing it comes in our head is side chaining. It's one of the typical routing principles that I'll come to that later or not now to understand in a better way. What if I would try to give some bell sound over here and creating and trying to recording in a different channel or different audio track? This is one approach. Number two, when for example I have two instruments like this, and let me just get the second track with something else. Okay. So this is how you can generally categorize the sounds and you preview the track. All right. And over here, this button controls the preview options. So just for the example's sake, I'm trying to. So what I'll do is I'll just group this track. This is how it is really easy to group a track in Ableton Live. Command G, that's a command key, and I can just rename them instrument 1. So now if I'll just play, whatever I'm playing, it is all about playing them together. And let me just make it as all ins. And for that, record enable should be on. All right. Cool. So kind of effects is I'm trying to show you this as an example. So whenever you are using grouping the devices, is nothing but grouping the instruments here. So generally, this concept also comes under or falling under one routing principle. And your eyes straightforward go down to your window, and over here you see grouping devices. And whatever you see here is all about instrument sections, different instrument sections, and so on and so forth. And what you see over here is some macro controllers to control instantly. This is generally happens when you create it or group devices. Now over here, this is grouping tracks. Let me just go to one of the track, and those are the features generally in Ableton. It lets you use the best of your processing power into it. For example, in my audio track, I have let's say a compressor, and let's say an equalizer. So these are all different sequences. First, the signal comes to the compressor, then the channel EQ. That is what it means. All right, but I can group them together, and I can do more things into it. All right. Again, that is for also Command G, and this is how you group it. And you see the macro controllers, and apparently I'll be side by side I'll be telling you the new features of Ableton Live has been introduced. Back in Ableton 10, it was just 8 macro controllers. And what is a macro controllers are for? Mostly internally or virtually to control some different parameters of that particular devices in one particular knob. For example, the threshold of the compressor, I want to use it. So that is how you used to do it. So map, once you click on this map, everywhere you see the green channels over here. There's a green, tents over here, and those are the parameters has been going to be get mapped. You can map, and I wanted to control, let's say, the threshold. So click on that, and click on that macro controllers and map. So that is how it generally happens. So you map now the threshold, and you can see that I'm controlling. Let me just pull on different view to it.
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, is it possible to multi-link controllers
Yes, of course. So do you mean that to the same
to
you
the
know
same macro channel?
yes, of course. So let's say, for example, I want to map this as well. There you go.
Okay,
Let's say,
so
for
both
example, I
move
wanted
now.
to control the equalizer mid map. Yes. Until
Oh,
unless you have a simultaneous work to do, so you get a macro mapping window here. The moment when you turn on this, and you
uh-huh.
start controlling them, and you can name it them as well. There is many more other settings you can do, like invert settings and so on and so forth. But yes, until unless you reach to a kind of a workflow, and when you need one macro controls to control everything. For example, a bus amount can be a controllable parameter to control it. Should be one tweaking button rather multiple tweaks button. So that is
Got
when
it.
I can map it to multiple. And in
Uh-huh.
Ableton Live feature, the 11 one, it gives you 16 macro controllers. It was 8, now 16 macro controllers. It's upgraded in the Live 11. And since we are understanding the topic of routing principles here, so the first thing which I would be definitely telling you about the side chaining first. But before that, I would like to touch base upon all the channel hierarchy and how do you generally conduct the routing principles to it. So let's get started with that. So let me unstack it. I have a kick here, and let me just delete this. I have a bell piano. Let me just get a bass. What I'll do is I'll just generally go here and type bass. Let me just preview something until I get a kind of bass I'm looking for. Let me make a simple groove for you so that you can understand in a better way. Okay, and cool. So double click on any of the clip will show you the empty region of the MIDIs, and that is how you can start writing your MIDI notes. So yeah, getting my pencil tool by pressing B and prolonging this note. So that's how it is going right now apparently. Let me design a key scale on A. No. And okay, let me quickly do a quick shot of a kick drum. Okay, pressing B, getting the pencil tool, and every up bits I'm just designing. And now I'm gonna hit my scene button. Sounds very boring, and as we do the principle of the side chaining, that this is the entire whole lot of instrument which you see it is not just one instrument, it is comprising of many elements in it. There is two instruments over here apparently, and these are grouped. This is called grouping devices in Ableton Live. So this is amazing features. Definitely for this I would be doing a separate workshop for that, and during the classes also I can also explain you that even more better way. But yes, so what happens, this is one instrument, I want to do the sidechain to it. So what I'll do is I'll just get to my bass and I get a compressor, because I know any kind of dynamical processor would give you the processing power into the side chaining. Now what do you mean by side chaining? It is like an automatic volume controller, right? And it is mostly musically and mixing wise also helpful in terms of making musical pulse. For example, if you're listening to any kind of electronic music or dance music or any kind of genre music where the rhythm pattern goes equally and evenly, it is not having any kind of a complex triplet or a swing, any kind of accent in it, or the kick is not falling irregular basis, it's completely regular basis. So sidechaining in that way, it is very effective for the musical purpose. So this is what exactly the thing which I want to create it. And for that to do, I'll be going to my audio effects. Let me take out my search button bass and let me get into one of my compressor, but that's my by default compressor. You can drag and drop either to the channel like this way, or since you have highlighted the channel, you can drag and drop here like this, and you get the expander button sidechain. And for this to do, I'll be getting my kick drums in it. So this is the 909 core kit, and to make it more simplified, label it drums and bass. So now you see it's updated drums. And now since a drums, or you can see this drum is a multiple devices of different pads, and a drummer rack of Ableton looks like this, where each of this key, these are each of the key or pad switch defining one key note, presenting one samples, and all those samples can be processed, and each of them are associated one kind of instrument. It could be sampler, it could be a synthesizer, it could be one simple sample sound which you might have drag and drop, and that redefining your sampler in it. Immediately it acts as a sampler of the Ableton device, which is called sampler itself. The name itself says a sampler and sampler. Okay.
Yeah, Hitansu. So few of them are saying that the MIDI is not audible. I'm not sure what's the issue.
Okay, that way I don't know. Probably I need to re-log in back. Will that be
Um,
possible?
would you just want to reshare your screen and maybe double check if share sound is enabled? Because I know on Ableton you've enabled Zoom audio,
Okay.
but we'll just try that once
Let me just do that then. Let
because
me know.
majority is saying no.
Okay. Now it is audible, everyone?
If you guys can drop it on chat, it's audible to me, Hitanshu, but if you guys are saying no. Students, just see if you've turned on original sound on top. So the button should say turn on original sound. Okay, if you guys are using phones, I'm not really sure how.
So I know this through which way it can be happened. So I'll take a time and I'll re-log in with the Sound Online account itself. It will be working for sure because I know this is happening during the classes as well. Sorry for the technical glitch, guys, but let me re-log in quickly.
Cool, we'll wait for you.
Thank you. All right. Um, Let me know, guys, if you can hear it again. I hope it is audible to everyone. Yes. All right.
Okay, we are getting a lot of yeses. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Hitanshu.
No problem. Cool. Okay, never mind. So, yeah, so this is one of the important features which you generally use it as a music producers, and as we know that this is very simple. Getting a compressors, and every compressor, any dynamic plugin has a side chaining options to it, right? So over here in the compressor of Ableton, you see that audio from. This is one of the typical routing things which you generally do it. Audio from where? Now, before getting into that, please remember any of the instrument or audio track you deals with in any DAW, it is always been the output is audio. For example, now here is the MIDI track over here. It is created without any kind of instruments in it. So there is no output only. It is just the MIDI signals getting in. And whatever you see in the meter is the velocity. The moment when I start dropping, dropping any kind of instruments in it, it's become an audio channel here, and it is by default stereo. So in Ableton, you see always stereo mode, until unless you are creating an audio channel as mono, or the VST itself having mono or stereo outputs in terms of creating to it. So many VSTs, like if I consider, there is mono signals as well, there is multi outputs as well, and nowadays mostly we deal with multi-channel VSTs. For example, if I call about contact, I will say the engine itself has a multiple outputs in it, and you can do the mix itself over there itself, and you can just bounce the entire audio within your track. That's what generally the contact engine lets you do, and like that and so on. There are many, and so on and so forth. So this is now the general technologies nowadays. Nobody wants to go with very tedious process and detailed manner like analogous way, that every individual track you label it and you create it and you send to one of the group. So routing principle itself tells you that. So what do you mean by that routing principle is, when a group of channels or multiple instruments, you wanted to send them to one particular plate, and over there in that plate you decorate your food in the seasoning or whatever you do it into it. It is just like that. I mean, audio in terms of whenever you deal with, you do the same thing. One particular channel you select, which is not capable of recording, but it is capable of receiving the signals. And in that signal you process something which is, we generally in industry term call it as parallel processing. And auxiliaries is that important, where when you mix, when you process your drums, when you process your guitars, bass, whatever the instrument which you deals with, you process them parallelly. Most of the time it is a general features, but it is not a thumb rule which you have to maintain it until unless you are using them. So since this particular inception happens, where things are completely get optimized, any plugin has a dry and wet amount. Any plugins nowadays you deals with, there is mix or dry amount which you generally set up. That is, in the other hand, which you call it as kind of a parallel processing. But in generally physical manner we create like this way, and sidechain is one of them. So now what do you mean by sidechain? As we know, there's a master and the slave game, that the master says, whenever I am talking you have to shout your mouth. Till what long you're gonna talk, that long is going to be completely quiet enough. The moment when I'll just stop my mouth, that moment you have to go up. That is the internal story behind that. So musically what does just happen, within a fraction of a second it happens, and that is how you generally do it, by routing the drums and the kick to the bass compressor in it. Alright, and where in the sidechain option you generally get different kind of instruments. Over here you see bass, drums, audio, electric, all those things you see here, the categories. Along with, I have auxiliaries set over here and the master itself. So any of them you can just route it and you can sidechain to it. But it should be purposeful. It can't be just anything that you route it. It's always been purposeful. So now here in this case, what is purposeful is all about sorry, the drums, I'm getting it into it to the bass guitar, and understanding now one mode, second chooser, which lets off choosing different kind of ways of doing the routing principles. Pre-effects, post-effects, post-mixers. And what do you mean by pre-effects? What do you mean by post-effects? What do you mean by post-mixer in Ableton Live? So now forget about Ableton Live. This is the concept in every routing principles which you generally deals with. Pre-effects, post-effects, and post-mixer, or generally we call it as a pre-effects and post. So pre means nothing but before the fader levels. Nothing but it is completely not obeying the levels of fader. So here if I just set it up pre, anything pre, for example here I have the kick drum, because I wanted to route just the kick drum, not the entire whole drum sets. That is why you get the list of the drums here, and you can see the entire whole instrument also I can sidechain to it. So the reason behind why I don't do that, because I just want my kick to go and sidechain to my bass guitar, not the entire whole drums, which has also snare and which has also many more other elements, because other elements also goes in a different parts and a different timing. So definitely I do not need that. So that is why it is really easy for us just to route it just a single channel or the single kick drum. So from here, the things are getting a little technical, guys. You need to understand. Once I open up this button, what you see here, the bass drum, the rim shots, the snare. If I go to the instrument, you see the same thing, the bass drum, the rim shot, the snare. So now you can consider, you can just compare this rim shot, snare and everything. Whatever I'm clicking on, it is exactly doing the same thing. It is coinciding, and it's it's kind of identifying, and it is showing these are my channel itself. Either you can control in the group device, and you can play, you can solo, you can mute, which is nothing but the same thing which you do in the channel, solo or mute. Okay, what mode you do it, and what other works which you do it. Panorama, mostly you made it left and right, right? Same thing also you can do it here as well. So this is called multi-channel VSTs. Generally it is called in Ableton drum rack or instrument rack. Instrument rack has a different way to do it, and drum rack has a different way to do it, because drum rack has to be played as a pads. So you see that kick and snare, and one of this channel only I'm going to route it. So what do you see here? You see the audio 2, alright, and receiving from which key? C1, alright. And the same thing which I am showing here, this is C1 apparently. And if I'll just hit my C1 knob, on my MIDI I'm playing C1. That's how it is. So this is how you need to understand this. Now this kick drum, I want to sidechain to my bass. It's pretty straightforward. You can see this is the same bass drum, but it has 3 categories of sidechaining. So now, understand now this 3 features: pre-effects, post-effects, post-mixer. Pre-effects means irrespective of the levels of the fader. That means it says, hey, I'm not going to obey your levels over there. I'm going to be as it is, whatever I am, I'm going to go and sidechain with the same amount of dynamic range. Post-effects, irrespective of, and not obeying the mixer window, or the mixer fader controls, or any of the settings of the mixer controls over here, whatever the fader levels or panorama level, it would not be listening to it. But for definitely whatever there as effects is in the kick drum, it will get processed and it will sidechain. It will go to the bass drum, it will sidechain it. So for example, in the kick drum, I might have a compressor in it that gets to the the compressor, and it gets to the bass guitar. That is what is all about post effects. Now if I just choose post mixer, it goes both. It goes to the fader levels, and in the fader, in the channels, whatever you have the fader level settings, and apparently whatever the settings of the fader, settings of the panorama, and so on and so forth, it will be obeying that. Along with that, if I have, say for example, I might have a compressor in it, for example. Let me get a compressor, drag and drop. So it will get processed, and also it will obey whatever the fader levels. So why this word I call as obey? Because generally we do not understand what is before fader levels, what is after fader levels. It's kind of very confusing. So it's very straightforward to understand that if something it's getting into it and processed, and something is not completely going, it is bifurcated and it is separately going, called pre and post respectively. So in the pre is nothing but it is completely not obeying. That's what exactly I said that word. So now, what should I choose in this case? Should I choose a pre, should I choose a post, or should I choose a post mixer? So pre effects, post mixer. Now in that case, definitely I would be choosing, there are 2 ways. One is, if I really don't want my process kick to go and sidechain to bass, it is all purposeful, there is nothing such, you have a list of things to do, then pre and the post effects is nothing, and the pre effects is nothing but completely you do not want it to listen or get processed whatever the dynamic range altered through the compressor. And what is the compressor is nothing but in the kick. So that is when I can do it. So let's get started with first the pre effects. So I've chosen. Now couple of more things I need to do it, that is ratio settings. And as we know that since it is a sidechaining process, and as I told you the story about the sidechaining, how does it let you do the work, so you have some settings to do it, attack and release. What you do with this is all about how fast the compressor is acting to the signal and how fast the compressor is completely getting out of the signals, and again getting back to the release attack point. So that is how attack and release works. So attack decides how faster the compressor attacks to the signal, then release decides how faster or slower the compressor completely get out, and again getting back to the attack point, because after release there is again attack. Alright, so that's how exactly it is happening over here. And whereas the ratio defines, or it completely lets you do only one thing, that how much of the signal has to be processed. So all this thing about the side chaining, without wasting time, I would be doing what? I just have to start defining my threshold, because the threshold is the only point is to set the levels at what level the compressor start acting to the signal. Now apparently if I listen, it's completely dry. And this kick, let me just process a bit, and for that to do I'll be having a different mode of mine. Now it's very boring, it's sounding completely unaffected. Now the moment when I start putting the threshold, I hope my audio is not giving you glitches, guys, because since we are on the Zoom. Cool. So this is what exactly one of the segment which you generally do it. It's very pretty simple thing. You want to make it very hard side chaining. Let me design the bass sound into the upper one. Now it sounds interesting. Now the things depends on you, whether you want to have a single MIDI line to go, or probably you wanted to make it like multiple percussive bass to go with. So this is again musical again, and it's, as I told you, it's all purposeful. So if I just design my all bass line like this way, this gives you a different vibe, previous compared to the other one. I'll just select all my midis and I'll just make it, let's say, a little more shortened. Things are different. So now there's 3 different stages of different grooves which you're listening right now. All right. So now, to this bass, let's say I want to give some reverb to it. I mean, definitely there's a question. How come a bass can get a reverb to it? It is, again, depends on, it's all artistic approach and the style of music which you're working on. But this is, again, I'm trying to show something purposeful here. Now, the second approach, this is one of the approaches, side chaining. Another approach is, for example, I'll come to that part, reverb, giving the audio effects later on. So audio segment is a completely different topic, and I'll be coming shortly to that. Let me just finish up the MIDI parts. So in the MIDI parts, what more I can do by understanding the segments of MIDI, from MIDI to the segments of the, the working principles in life. And you see, MIDI from, this is mostly, I would say, MIDI from is all about when you try to play something as live performances. And as you can see that I have my Rolly here, and SSL2 Plus is my sound card. And generally my sound, if the sound card do have the 5-pin MIDI on the back, that way it will be helpful. My 61 MK2 key lamp and computer keyboard as well, yes, because sometimes if you are in the airport, you generally use a computer keyboard to produce your music, and my pusher. But apart from that, I can route the signal from one of the existing MIDI track. That is what is all about MIDI from, or it is in. So over here, what I set it as, for example, I wanted to get the drum sound, the drum sounds into my bass track. And over here, I have labeled drums and bass. So please have a look into it. So what I can do is I can just get my drums in my bass track. Now, over here, you are not only listening to the bass, also you're listening to drums here as well. Now, since you can see that there's a little pulse going on like that. So the moment when I choose post effects, this is what is happening. And again, you get the 3 modes of it: post effects, pre effects. So if I choose pre effects, and in the drums, you listen to that. Let's say I just get my so this is one of the kind of work which you generally do it, because merging and kind of musical effect into it, and you're trying to listen both the bass and kick together. But now you can see the kick is now sounding as the same kick the moment when I turn it off. It's partially audible because of the mode of pre-effects and post-effects. Okay, so this is one. And why do we generally need them? Because again, it is purposeful. So whenever, for example, I want my kick drum is not only going to the master track. So because always remember, whenever you're considering channels, whether it is software instruments or MIDI track, or audio track, by default is always master. Now what is a master? It is a return track, and in live you see the master channel here. All right. Sending like this way, or MIDI from, I'm just getting, or I'm asking the drums track, hey, just bleed in my channel, and along with my bass I'll be playing that. This is exactly happening. Now what is happening here the moment when I just change my monitoring system to the in? Both are MIDI track, and the drum has a key, and that particular key is triggering to the bass MIDI track, and the bass has a different instrument here, which is nothing but this 2 operator and hand slap. That is why it is sounding like a pulse code. Tick tick. It's not doop doop like that. So the conclusion here is this particular key defines a different set of note of my bass. So same thing I can do it, for example, creating a MIDI track, and let me just design some MIDIs over here. Let me just design C-1, which is a lower and lower octave. For that to do, I'll be let's say this is what the empty MIDI channel carries, only the MIDI clips. Now what is gonna happen, what I'll do is, instead of the drums, I'll be changing this to, let's say, 6th, the MIDI track. Now you will see once I'll start playing this, and if I'll just stop, and this is apparently playing, to the bass MIDI channel over here, and you can see it's post mixer, which is kind of going apparently right now. Conclusion, what I'm trying to do is, let me trigger that. Whatever I've written the MIDI clips over here, it is no more playing. It is playing from the 6th MIDI track. That is nothing but my last track. See, C-1, it's just playing. Now let me just make it up and up. You'll understand what is happening. So what I'm trying to convey here is, one MIDI channel, and they have the MIDI triggers and patterns designed. They are playing, as well as another segment of MIDI empty channel I'm creating, and I'm defining different notes, and that is triggering to my bass track over here. How does triggering? Because I have assigned from MIDI the last track, MIDI track, or let me just name them as something else, just to not get chaos and not getting any kind of chaos. MIDI clip. Okay. So this is what exactly now going over here. Clip MIDI. So you can see that the existing pattern is stopped. It is not playing no more. Now this designed setup pattern A2 notes is triggering to the bass track. That is all it means. But what if I trigger both together? This is how it's going to sound like. Conclusion: when do we going to use this kind of a workflow? I wouldn't say MIDI overlapping, because MIDI overlapping, it can be done. It is mostly when you just do different segments of notes designing and having different sets of patterns to go with the existing MIDI clip. Over here it is an existing MIDI clip, and over here in this track it has a different pattern in it, but both are getting triggered. This is one kind of approach. Another approach is, for example, I don't want to play anything, it's just that I want to let my MIDI clip trigger from this to this. I just want to stop it. Mostly in the live performances it is helpful. Another second approach. For example, this is how the entire groove going on. For example, and after a couple of time there is a changeovers to the groove. 1 2 3 4. After a couple of segments I wanted to change a different pattern to it. Hope you're getting it. So if you are a live performer, love to perform live, you create empty MIDI channels like that and you route it, and you give or do, or let's say most of the times what happens is we just wanted to play the live set. We don't just wanted to play until unless we have some vocals to go in on the fly. So that is when you are completely don't want to see the instruments. Alright, you created a groove and it is letting go, then you started playing and you're performing. So for example, like this. And I'm sure because I'm on the Zoom, it will be little do some latency issues, guys, so bear with that. I'm just gonna turn off and check 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 check. Check. All right. Check. All right. Before getting into it, and before getting into this third approach, I'll be explaining you about the monitoring. And monitoring is all about it's very essential part again in every DAWs. When we have a studio, when we have another room for dubbing recordings, and let's say an instrumentalist who wants to just listen, input monitoring is there always. It is not that, but also what if you wanted to just listen the input monitoring in the post fader, in that segment or pre-fader levels. And what if another ways is all about, let's say we have auxiliaries and we have, let's say we have a headphone mix. We are just separately sending the headphone mix in a different way. We just don't want to listen on the monitor in a different way. So input monitoring is that important. And whereas what happens in this, my bad, check. What happens in this three modes is, off means no input monitoring is apparently happening and no signal also going because my arm is completely turned off. This is record arm. So to get in or to pass any signal, you have to turn it on. or else it won't listen anything. Okay, so the difference between these two are in and auto is nothing but if you just wanted to preview, it is just previewing, but it would not record anything the moment I turn on. And if I just stop, so it's going on, it's recording, and I've stopped. Now what happens when I try to play this in the mode of in? It's just listening my audio signals in it. It is not at all playing whatever I've recorded here. But in general mode of off or auto, so it's going on, it's recording. So audio signal you're listening to. Give me a minute. So audio signal you're listening to. So conclusion, there are 3 modes which lets you in and auto and off, meaning if you wanted to audition as well as you want to record. If you just choose the in, it's nothing but it's just lets you preview, no matter despite of whatever you've recorded, it would not play again back. You can just preview your signals, whatever you are. As in, I'm a performer, I'm just previewing myself. What I've just recorded, it is not gonna be previewing or it's not gonna be playing. That is what is all about the in mode. Mostly it is effective and it is useful when you do not want to listen whatever you have recorded. In the live scenarios, in the performance mode, you have a segment of audio clip or the samples to go exactly after 9th bar, and in between you just sing up till 8th bar. That is when you can turn on the in mode and you can just sing, and the moment when you are getting into it, you can just turn off the in mode, and apparently I'm just not doing that. So this is the monitoring sections, but how this relates to your routing principle is, for example, I just wanted to preview whatever my voice exactly I've captured. So let me just do some good singing in it. And for that to do, I would definitely do some magical thing to my vocals, where Live has unique devices for processing modulations, and this is what the modulation and pitch categories over here. And also a vocoder. Modulators, if I would go, and the Max for Live devices. Okay. So the vocoders comes in this categories of utilities, and I'm just dragging and dropping to one of my vocal channel. Okay. I'm just using the 4th number track, renaming them Vox. So definitely I cannot preview. Why? Because I'm on the Zoom right now. So let me just get in like this way, and just to check what is going on my vocals, I'll just turn it off. Alright, so it's a vocoder which is doing apparently the job, and so it's just the vocals has been recorded apparently, and this is what the piece of vocals which I've recorded, and it is looped properly. Alright, definitely sounding wise this, it's not gonna sounding that good, and I want to create some vocal effects on the back to this groove. And let me turn off my clip MIDI track, and this is how things is gonna be like. Reduce my sounds very boring. So immediately what I'll do, I have 2 cents by default since the time when I launched, and this is how you see the auxiliary tracks, mostly the another kind of a type of return tracks, auxiliary tracks named reverb and delay. You can also create of your own by creating return track, insert return track, and you can rename them. Let's say reverb 2, and over here I have some device to drop my favorite plugins, which I most of the times I generally use it in my mix and my production. It's a third party and recently introduced by Native Instrument, the round. And for that to do, you see what every channel has a sense amount. This is exactly the bus amount which you set it over here, and so that in my Vox track, and it is allocating to the C return track. There is A, there is B, there is C. There are the numbers of the more you create the return track, it will be creating D, N, E, and F like that, and so on and so forth. Cool. What I'm trying to do is right now is I'm gonna just give some amount, check, and now probably I can just apply a vocoder to it just to make the a simple vocoder. Probably I'll just drag and drop. So this is how exactly it is going on, and you can see that I have some things to set over here right now, and all these individual parameters are green tint, meaning I can control through the macro controllers. You cannot control here, it's all grayed out. Okay, well that's a different topic again. So definitely see I'm changing the step amount. I'm trying to make it as half the value. Now it will go definitely. And to make it even more effective, I have the another by default revolve given by the by default template, and I'm gonna give a A to it. And there's a delay plugin as well, and it's one of the very effective delay plugin of Ableton has been given. Mostly you create the most famous ping pong delay by giving the left and right channels with the linked option, with the proper way of going from left to the right, right to the left, with those magical things which is happening, along with the filter given over here as well. So that's how it sounds like. Let me immediately design a chord so that the groove, once it's ready, then probably things will be easy for you to understand even more better way. So let's make something musical first. So for that to do, randomly I am searching pads. This is very easy to start with. If you really do not know where to go, what to preview the instruments, I do not have time right now to do it. So I have my favorite instrument set already, or probably I can just go to one of my plugins over here. Let me just introduce also to the third parties as well, but not entertaining third parties here, just that the sound which I know that will be sounding really good. Just a single note and it does all. I'm trying to create some kind of harmonical chords as well, because just to sound a little more justifying to the groove. It's completely harmonical, and hitting to the command, I'm setting up different velocity levels to it, and it's very easy in Ableton to set your velocities, and it's now a different new approach to the velocity controls in Live 11. You can see the things are completely different right now. But anyways, let me just, oops, the battery. Okay, cool. So sounds very boring, and it's also sounding very exaggerated. That way, definitely, I'll just do what? It's very simple in Ableton. Just drag and drop the same compressor, sidechain compressor, to one of your pad. And over here, let me just name quickly on it. Sorry for the glitch, because it's the Zoom which is not handling anything, but what I can do is I have the solutions for that, which I generally explain to people, those who come across Live 11 or Live 10, whatever DAW you use it. When we are lacking the processing part and you are giving this kind of glitches, every DAW has a really good options called freeze. And let me first, I'm just trying to create one more octave. I want the snare to go. So what I can do is probably to the second clip, drag and drop, and let me play the second clipping and keep on trying whatever the best possible notes, and with the velocity will be sounding good. So for that to do, what I'll do is, like, because of this glitch, and I can't really handle this glitch which is going on apparently, let me quickly just do one thing. Kick drum. Probably I can do something else just now because it sounds very boring. Segment I can just copy it here. So now, time to just give little effects to the reverbs and delay, and it's a very pretty interesting way you can just assign reverb to individual clip in the drum rack. And let me just get a by default reverb. Okay, this is snap. So trying to right now quickly freeze everything. So select all the tracks like this and go to freeze option. So okay, one quick thing. So anything or any track has been grouped or device grouped, you need to just open it and you need to do the freezing to it individually. It wouldn't let you do it. So it says the track drums cannot be frozen because of the routing bias compression. So since it is drums which is completely the main streamline for side chaining, it can't be freezed, because if you're gonna freeze them, freezing means what? The signal never lets go, or it's completely processed and it is bounced for temporary purpose. It is in the audio format, the freeze format always in audio or temporary audio format. It's a different extension to it. Different DW has a different extension to it. And once you do that, then definitely it cannot be sidechain, because it is not going to normal processed after you freeze. So that is why a sidechain process cannot be freeze. That's what exactly the information it says the moment when I just start trying to freeze it. So the other tools are, yes, of course I can. It is freezing. Takes time though. So once it freezes, what you see here, this is little completely like sky blue tint color. It says that no more processing can be done to it. No record arm. You can only mute or solo. You can do that, but no more other things you can do it. But the actual routing principles and with the different approaches I'm going to explain you today with this musical approaches and along with the audio track as well, which I've sung it. So done, 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 done. Okay, done. So you can see the processing power saved completely and it's no more gonna glitch. I hope so. Get this. That sounds good. So now, quick routing to my vocals. This is a general way of routing which I've done it to my A and B and C. Now, what other ways where I can utilize Ableton's live features as more musical approach? For example, let's say I want to resample. Now, this is another fourth approach. What do you mean by resampling is something is recorded, again you're recording them back by utilizing some other processing unit to it. It is all a whole lot of creative things which you do it just to make that recorded sounds a little different way. Whereas the existing recorded clip or the sample would not altered. That is called resampling. Now what is happening here? Let me turn off my MIDI clip and let me create an audio track first to do it. So generally what happens, other approaches are you do some return recordings. Back in those and tape recorders, how things were happening, everything is real-time rendering, real-time bouncing. This is one approach. Another approach is resampling, as I told you. So in Ableton, apart from the external in as audio form, which you see the resampling. Now what do you mean by resampling in Ableton means whatever the inputs have been given here or you've been working on will directly go to the master track, and from the master track it is routed back to whatever the track you have assigned as resampling. So this comes in like this way, audio from in that categories, and you see numbers of channels here. You see the bass, you see the drums, you see the vocals, you see the pads. So what you see in one audio channel is, if you really wanted to see the clear picture about Ableton's routing principle is, in an audio channel, you see also MIDI channels coming in. Why you are seeing that is coming in? Because all this individual instrument tracks, pads and bass and drums, ultimately the input coming from the MIDI clips, but once it's triggered the instrument, it's become audio output only coming out of the devices. That is why it is becoming an audio channel itself. That is why you can see that routing principle over here. And what do you mean by resampling? It does the same thing. All my audio output goes to the masters and it is coming back. Resampling. Record arm mode on, and I wanted to record all this with, let's say, some kind of a different approach in terms of like a kind of a modulation to it. For example, I wanted to have all my instrument to sound like little chorus, little phasing kind of sound. So for example, this is a phase flanger effect which I'm dragging and dropping in my audio, and let me rename that as sampling. What more I can do it? For example, I wanted to have a stutter effect, or let's say I have some Lfo goes on. I'm just dragging and dropping directly over here, and I'm setting my rate. You can see the signal is coming in as nothing but coming from the output of the masters directly coming into it. Now what if you have a question, what if I wanted to just sample one instrument as resampling? All you have to do is solo that. So if you solo, then other tracks are mute by default, and that solo anyways by default goes to the master, and master is getting back by the resampling track. If you want to have selective instruments only or all the instruments together. Now let's just start recording to it. So 1, 2, 3. Now whatever I've recorded, I'm unable to audition them because it is in the resampling mode. So turn this off. Now let's listen what I've recorded. I just solo this is what you have recorded. Even this also I can send to one of the existing reverb. And with the compressor, the same compressor, let me just unfreeze the bass, drag and drop to the resample. So this is called resampling. Mostly you do keep on doing resampling to in a different ways. So this is a whole lot of approaches which you can do it. So what we have understood just by understanding MIDI's re-triggering to another MIDI tracks, number one. Number two, side chaining. Number three, normal audio processing units through sending to the auxiliaries track and sending them out to it, which is very general ways which you should do it. Number four, resampling. Resampling is that effective for the live performances as well. For example, I'm singing apparently in this particular same groove, and I wanted to alter my vocals on the go, on the fly, in a different approach. So my vocals along with the resample track vocals together, it is merging two vocals together. So this is one of the approach. So me only by myself creating kind of a chorus effect, kind of a modulations effect to it, any kind of articulation modulation effect which you generally do it. So these are the ideas. And see, those ideas, exactly what we studied today or what we learned today is all about how do you merge with the technologies. Because if this, entire units were not there, things would have been way impossible to create those kind of ideas. So that is why it is that important to understand a console. It is that important to understand the basics of sounds and everything. And it is that important as well. Then only you can impose those ideas and you can, intrigue your entire ideas in a different manner. Alright, so those are the routing principles, and that is how you generally understand. Let me just do anything as such. For example, this time I don't want to do, let's say, any kind of routing principle. I just wanted to have, let's say, let me just make it external then. For example, in one single channel, you can see that audio from, audio to. So over here, this track carrying nothing. Let me just take off all my devices. Let's have this flanger turned off. So let's say one of the other approaches is within one track or one audio channel, you wanted to layer down multiple instruments. This is another fifth approach of understanding the routing principles. And again, all this goes with the understanding of post mixer, post effects, and pre effects. All right. So things are happening in this way right now. So that to do is what I'll do is I'll just assign my master here. And the moment when I just select audio from the master, then you definitely have the question. Then what do you mean by resampling then? The question is all about two different approaches. Resampling is no matter what, whole lot of an entire session goes to your individual track which have been assigned as resampling. But when you choose master again have the different settings to it. Along with that, it has three different approaches with the same modes: pre-effects, post-effects, post-mixer. What if in the master channel I have let's say I have an EQ, for example. Sorry, my bad. So when I choose the master channel audio from pre-effects, it is irrespective of the device and irrespective of the channel fader modes or panorama. The raw will definitely come here the moment which you choose pre-effects. The moment when you choose post-effects, it is just obeying the levels or the parametric values of the effects, which is nothing but the channel EQ apparently, and whatever the settings which you might have done it will get affected, but it will be going back after the fader levels, meaning it is not obeying the fader levels or panorama levels of the master channel. That is this. The moment when you choose post mixer, it is both. The signal first goes to the devices and also the faders, and after the fader it gets processed and it comes back here. So definitely I need something processed to get recorded. Mostly mastering engineers, if you're really a person, if you do not have any other DAWs, again there'll be a big debate happens generally that, hey, how come mastering can happen in Ableton Live? How come mixing can happen in Ableton Live? So it's all about different mentalities which you carry with. Every DAW has the capabilities of doing everything, but specific DAWs are meant for something. Mostly Ableton or other softwares, the names which you generally hear it's has the capability of recording, has the capabilities of mixing, mastering. It is just that what do you do with, how do you do it? Are you okay with, are you creating this track? Because end of the day, the track sound has to be good. Nobody's going to ask you what DAWs have been used it, or what devices, or what multi-plugins which you might have used it. So that you generally we know it. So that's what it's all about. So in this resampling track, I'll just rename them as just return print. And now what I'm trying to do is here is I'm just gonna record something here, whatever I'm doing it. Here, before in the resampling it was working the solo, but in choosing master, solo doesn't work. Why? Because the signal is completely going to here, but the moment when you choose solo, the moment when you choose this track solo, all other tracks are muted. That's what it's all about. If I choose prefixes, what's happening? Check it out. All my tracks coming to the master, from master it is coming audio from master, it's bleeding in this particular channel, and I'm trying to record them. So check it out, I'll be showing 3 different recordings here. So first with the prefixes, check it out. For that to do, I'll just increase the wet amount of my phase flanger and I'm going to start recording. Here you go. Okay, stop. So now just I'm gonna solo it and listen to it. So what exactly the thing which you're getting at here is nothing but it is, since the flanger is there, you are listening this, but the levels is completely captured with the levels of whatever the master has been coming through. Turning on again, and I'm gonna record now, this time with post effects. And as we know, in the master channel there is an EQ, right? So what I suppose, or what I presume is, the signal will get processed through this channel EQ and it will print it over here. So let's just check it out on the second clip. One, two, three, four, stop. Check it out. Now let me just check with the solo. So hope you can hear that little highs on the track compared to the other one. So let me just play both. Give me a minute. Sorry, my bad. Versus this one. So you can see there is a highs is missing on the first one. Let me just rename them. Every clip you can name like this way, just to understand what is happening. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the hi-hats is more open and more having the space in it. Post mixer, it is respective of Not irrespective, it's respective of whatever the fader levels. For example, let me just pan it left. Don't know what is going to be supposed to record in the way. So for that to do is I'll just definitely reduce down my volume and start recording. So you can see the signal is coming falling on the left. If you can't even hear it, the meter says everything. Let's listen to it by soloing it. And it has a different segments or process to go by because it's post effects and it's understanding the way it has to go with. So, conclusion. The sixth approach, when you do mastering work, when you do any kind of let's say resampling work manual way, not like the same whole lot of a resampling, but just by choosing the resampling. Because the difference between resampling and choosing just a master to be routing into any of the existing empty MIDI audio track is nothing but there are two approaches which you do it. One, you just want to resample it. Number two, you just wanted to resample with different ways of levels and along with the post effects and mixer effect to the entire whole audio which you are processing. Approaches and different examples to it. For example, you are performing live. For example, you are working in terms of a track mastering. There are two differences. Now first, live performances. Suppose I'm performing and I wanted to give some kind of real-time effects to my vocals, and immediately those segments I have recorded, I want to stop it. Then again, after some time, I wanted to play again those things. So it's just like this. This is how it is going on apparently. So 1 and 2 and 3. 1, 2, 3, go. This is just a flanger. Let me just change the device to something else. Probably it will be good enough. Let's say I have a different approach. For example, I have this thing to go. I love to use Lfo Tool mostly, and this is one of the amazing plugins for creating side chaining effect, creating effects like staccato effects and rhythmatic elements, designing different articulations and so on and so forth. So this has to go with, and this is a whole lot of approach, and only the music starts like this. And let's start with the drum. 1, 2, I have my push here, and I'm imposing the bass here. So 1, 2, 3. So there's a whole lot of a concept of routing, and yeah, that's what it's all about for today's thing. And the most important thing is how would you approach it. That's really matters. It doesn't matter that which database you use it, whether you use, definitely I can call the names as FL Studio, Studio One, Cubase, Logic, and so on and so forth, Reaper, Reason. And that way all those different databases has a different beautiness to it. They have a different working flow to it. Yeah, you guys have any questions? Or Autopan, which one? I guess I missed out which questions you guys have to ask me. Probably I just missed out. Probably
Yeah,
now is the
so
time. Yeah.
Hitanshu, now maybe we can unmute the students and let them ask the questions. So is anybody willing to ask any questions?
Yeah,
You can just raise your
exactly.
hands and we'll unmute you guys.
I guess they can unmute themselves. And
Hello, sir.
hi, Pratap.
Yes, sir. So I had this question about side chaining. So imagine you have a bunch of different instruments going to one reverb send, all right? And you just want to sidechain the reverb, but you don't want to put the sidechain compression on the main reverb send. You want to put it on a particular element. So how would you go about doing that? Are you going to create an FX rack and before it is sent to that audio only the a part of it is getting sidechained or something?
So things are very simple as per your question. So you mean you wanted to unalter the reverb process of that particular bass guitar. For example, in this case, this is what the bass and kick in going on.
Ah.
Okay. Let's say the vocals, kick and vocals. Now here there is a reverb already in it, or I've
Yes.
processed to one of my reverbs unit. Now
Yes.
your question, according to your question, is what? You want to sidechain the reverb in a separate ways?
I want to sidechain only the wet signal of your vocal, which is going to that reverb send. But if there is your pads also linked to that reverb send, I don't want the pads to be sidechained, the wet signal of the pads.
So you create another alternative return track. All right, and it's very simple. You just drag and drop. You separately send your vocals.
But isn't it possible in the same reverb send?
For example, I want to sidechain in this.
Yes, the same reverb send. Yeah.
Cool. So now, in that case, then it is very impossible, because what happens here is, one way is possible, probably by creating the groups, the device.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Command G. I'm creating the group here. All right, and let me just go to over here the chain processes. So now let's say I wanted to just side chain. Okay, the reverb can't be sidechain. So let's say, for example, I want to sidechain just the vocals. Here you go. Here you go. So for that, for that to do is, I'll just have to go to. Give me a minute. So let me just first pull on.
Sir, or I have another idea. What if you suppose it is sidechain to the kick, your wet signal, all right? What if you automate or sidechain that send knob, which is there on that main channel over there? And whenever the kick hits, the send knob will go down and up.
So you can do that, but why do you have to go the such complicated procedures when things are very straightforward? That's what is all about today's topic. That unnecessarily creating too many impossibilities or complexity. As for your questions, there is a way to do it, and for that to do, I have a different approach to it.
Okay.
According to the first thing, I'm gonna create a group devices first. All right, and now let's say, let me just try chain. pads also assigned. The pads also going. Let me just send the pads as well. This is the first audio effect. Okay. So everything goes to the A audio effects, which is reverb.
You need to freeze something, sir.
So what happens is, internally in the grouping device, you have rack output, which you can set. That is the process. That is the thing which I want to show you. Apparently, let me just freeze it.
Okay.
What was
And
the other thing which you were saying?
Is there a way to copy automations also in Ableton?
Yes, of course. In envelope sections.
Can you show that one, sir?
Yeah. So it matters. In this situation, let me just create that, then probably copy in where. I mean, you have to specifically tell me what your idea
Say
is.
on your playlist track, you have a bunch of instruments playing, and you're automating the filter cutoff of this one, bass or whatever, bass or drums. And
Okay.
later you want the same thing to repeat. Instead of drawing the automation again, can you like copy and paste it?
Yeah, it's very simple. Let me show you
Uh,
that. Let me just first do
yes, sir.
this, then I'll show you
Yes,
that.
sir.
Cool, it's freezed. But that's the only problem is I cannot. Okay. So what I'll do is, give me a minute. Okay. Over here, would you see that insert an auxiliary? So for most of the times, what happens is when you create a grouping device, and let me just show you this on the audio track. So let's say I have compressor, I have a gate, just randomly taking something, and I'm just trying to group them. So Command G, grouped it. All right. And now the moment when I group, you see chain here, and the chain lets you assign what things you want to do it. Over here there are compressor, there is gate in it, and apparently it's like an individual channel strip which you deals with. And there is mute, solo, everything. Okay. Also, there is reverb, there is effects which you can put it in a separate way. Okay. So what you need to do is, for example, I wanted to send amount, for example, and mostly it comes under audio rack. Every categories, instruments, drums, and audio effects, it has its own way, and that's called rack. So same goes over here. Mostly I just audio rack, but however it is not showing apparently. So what you do is you just drag and drop. Okay, this is one reverb. Let me just rename them. And over here, this is my unit of compressors and reverb. So in this audio track, whatever I'm gonna do, let me just drag and drop this vocal. So it is compressing and equalizing first, or gated first. So then the reverb comes in. For that to do, you have different sequences to it, and to do that you have always a sequence pattern design as a chain rack. But if you really don't want to do it, that is when you assign in a different channel the auxiliaries. There's a general process which you do it, and in this particular audio effects is whenever you want to do it, the same thing which I'm assigning here in audio effects is, and my entire things going on. Mostly you have audio output track output, which I'm not able to see right now. I don't know why it is not showing here. Okay, drop in audio effects. So all those three units have a chain over here. You can see that, and the
Yes.
same chain which you see it. So what happens is, in this case, if I really want to sidechain this audio effects is, and let me just put the same compressor. Take out the bass. And copying the same compressor because the settings are the same. Now, there are many things which you see. Reverb and delays and, if you just wanted to separately do this, you can just assign the reverb to and you sidechain to it. Now, but your question is what happens is, to your situation, the vocals and the pads are all falling on the same channel strips. So if something
Yeah.
is falling on the same channel strip, it is little difficult to do it.
It's a longer
That
process.
it's a very longer process. You generally don't do that. So that is when I suggest you to do in this way, creating another return track and
How many
separately allowing
return
editor
tracks can we create in live 11,
until
sir?
until your process gets hang, your entire computer gets hang. So
Nice,
all the
nice.
MIDI is audio track. It's the same thing in live. Then there is nothing. 11 has a
No
many features
limitations.
and so no limitations to it.
Oh, okay, okay. That's great, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Also show me the automation copying, sir.
Perfect. So for example, here in this bass, generally you deals with the envelope, right? And you have many things to do. This is how envelopes looks like in the live 11. It was differently looking before. So it was samples, clip. The clip is as it is with new features. Very shortly, I'll be doing again Ableton Live 11 workshop, which is completely explaining about the Live 11 features. So here is your envelope, and what we generally used to do is we generally drag and drop things, and we generally assign the parameters. For example, this is what on and off, which I wanted to assign it to this MIDI, and apparently I just wanted to copy this sections. And it's very easy. Command C, just like actual sheet. Command C, Command V. You are selecting.
Oh, okay, okay.
And for example, the same automation you want to impose it on the vocals. It's okay. It is over here, for example. And you select those area, paste it up. Definitely, the segment was different than this because that segment was shorter. This segment is bigger. So wherever you select, copy and paste it. So you are just putting it this way. So what I did, I copied from the base, whatever I've done it, and I just put it. See, the segment is very smaller. It's just 1 bar. But here in this track, it is 4 bars which I have selected. Let me just choose 1 bar and let me put it. There you
go. Okay.
So is that your question or anything else that you want to do?
I just want to know how to copy and paste automation.
So it's selecting, copying.
Select, copy, paste. Yeah,
anywhere, any clip, whether you are even in your, let's say, even you are in your arrangement view, you can just do the same approach. Command V, pasting it. There you go.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, guys? Let me know, guys, or else we are done for today's workshop, and I hope this workshop is helpful to all of you. And a couple of them, they've asked very important questions, and a couple of them I'm trying my best to answer you that. But always the things are keep coming in, and I'll be doing more better things for you that. And reach us out anytime, any moment, whatever the doubts which you are having it. And grab your hands on Live 11 if you can go and purchase. It is apparently 20% off, and you can go and buy. Let me know if you need any kind of help. Thank you, Roger. And thank you.
Thanks a lot, Hitanshu. I'm just reminding the students, guys, I've dropped a link on the chat, which is a Google form, which will help us make these workshops a lot better according to your requirement. And Hitanshu, thanks for joining us, and hope you guys like the workshop. We'll see you guys soon in the next one. Yeah.
Bye bye. Thank you, Roger.
Bye, Hitansu. Have